Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Medical Writing Stories, the series where we dive into the fascinating world of medical writing through the eyes of those who know it best. Today, I'm so excited to present Dr. JoAnna Pendergrass, a veterinarian who has been successfully running her own medical writing business for over 7 years now. JoAnna, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited to hear your story.
Happy to be here.
And I would like to start by hearing about your background. So, could you walk us through your journey from vet practice to medical writing?
Sure. So I actually was never in veterinary practice. I went straight from vet school. Well, I'll say I took a circuitous route. So when I started veterinary school, I thought I was going to go into small animal practice, as many vet students desire to do. But by the time I got to my fourth year, I realized that the private practice environment just was not for me. I'm very introverted. So the thought of client facing day in and day out, it just was not appealing to me at all. So, but there's always such a push in vet school towards private practice. There's really not a lot of information available for if you want to do something other than that. But I did
Mhm.
have an interest in research. I'd done a summer research program after my second year in vet school. Um, and that piqued my interest in doing research. So I decided to pursue a research career after vet school. And I moved down to Atlanta in 2010 to do a postdoctoral research fellowship at Emory University in Atlanta, their primate research center. But I quickly realized about 2 months into my 2-year postdoc that research was not for me either. It was just such a big shift, from the fast-paced world of vet school, to the slower pace of research. It just wasn't a good fit for me. But around that time, I learned about medical writing. So it was very fortuitous that at the time that I was realizing that research was not for me, that I learned about medical writing. I hadn't heard of it before, but it just seemed like such a great um, career opportunity to be able to combine my love of science and love of writing. So I essentially spent the rest of my postdoc preparing for a career in medical writing. So I did different writing experiences. I joined the American Medical Writers Association and attended some of the local meetings. And then, so I officially started my medical writing career in 2012. I worked at a medical communications agency, and their focus was in human hematology and oncology. So, coming from the vet world, not exactly the same, but I understood enough of the terminology to be able to understand what was going on. However, I realized that writing for a pharmaceutical audience, which was mainly the type of writing I was doing, was not a good fit for me. So after that experience, I worked at another medcom agency doing more like abstracts, like conference abstracts, poster presentations, PowerPoint slides, that type of writing, still kind of for a pharmaceutical academic audience. Again, not the good fit. So there's been just a series of things where to get to where I am now, I had to realize there were multiple things that were just not good fits. But through all of those experiences, I realized that the type of writing that I was most passionate about was writing for consumers and more specifically pet owners. That was something that was really impressed upon us during vet school was how to talk to pet owners in a way that they could understand and that was empathetic, but of course was not talking down to them. So once I realized like that was my niche in medical writing, that allowed me to pursue that specific area of writing and make a good career out of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's fascinating how like sometimes awareness of where you are at the at the moment and understanding what is it that you can take from there for the next step
Yes.
to guide your path so important. It looks like you did that a few times. So I'm curious, like during this process, did you have mentors? Did you have some key influencers? How's that for you? Like understanding what works for your path.
Yeah, that was definitely a journey in and of itself. So when I started in medical writing, I didn't know any other vets who were doing medical writing. So I was around PhDs, so grad students, well, not grad students, but they went to grad school. So I didn't really have anyone around me that came from my same background. So it was actually kind of lonely for my first few years because I didn't know anyone with my background who was doing what I was doing. So it wasn't until I would say maybe I can't remember the exact time point, but at some point I decided, let me go on LinkedIn to see and connect with other vets who are medical writers. So I won't say that they were necessarily mentors, but they were colleagues.
Mhm.
And it helped me just feel not so alone, being a vet doing something that's so human health centered. So it just helped to have someone who had my same background. In terms of mentorship, that didn't really come into play for me until I started freelancing. So after I realized that consumer education was the niche that I was going to pursue, I realized that there really weren't a lot of jobs for me in medical writing in Atlanta that were so specific to pet owner education. So freelancing became the only option for me to really do the type of specific writing I wanted to do. Um, but I never saw myself as a business owner. So it was just this brand new, like, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm really anxious about it. So I contacted one of my colleagues who had already had her freelancing business for several years. She put me in contact with her business coach. So I would say it was more coaching than mentorship, I guess, because I really do see my business coach as the person who really got me grounded in terms of business ownership, what it means to be a business owner, what it means to work for yourself.
That's really interesting, and I do want to go back to this point of the business coach. That's something I want to hear more about. But going back to your first job as a medical writer, how was the process of adapting the writing style coming from postdoc into your first role as a medical writer? Because it's the different writing style, right?
Yeah, I don't even know. I probably wasn't even thinking about it that way. I think because it was so brand new that I wasn't
Mhm.
thinking about writing styles at that point. It was just more about getting my foot in the door. So I didn't really realize when I started as a medical writer that there were so many different forms of medical writing and there were different audiences to which you could write. So for me, it wasn't really about adapting because I didn't even know there was a writing style like to adapt to.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, that's when we are at the leaving it, it's one thing, and then once you look back and you see like all the path and all the things you learned, and just so amazing looking back at the journey. Besides, well, we talked about the writing styles. Were there any other challenges you had on the beginning on this transition into medical writing?
I would say um, one of the biggest challenges was not knowing any other vets who were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've often felt like a fish out of water. So even though I understood the terminology because so many things are similar between human health and animal health, I understood the terminology. And I could, have a conversation, but it's like I wasn't around anyone who spoke my language.
Mm.
So I would say that was one of the biggest challenges was just really not feeling comfortable and confident because I wasn't around people who came from my same background who were now doing what I was doing. So that was definitely a big challenge. I think another challenge was just trying to figure out what type of writing am I good at? What type of writing do I actually like? So the challenge was going through those different, first jobs. to realize, oh, that's not what I'm good at. That's not what I like. And like you said, like looking back, it's amazing to look at the journey, when you're looking back, but when you're going through it, it's pretty uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
to
100%.
realize, yeah, like, okay, well, I'm not that good at this and I don't really like it, but I don't know what I am good at. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what I do like. So that was another challenge of just trying to figure out what type of writing am I good at? What type of writing do I want to do? And then the next challenge was jumping into freelancing. Like that is it's a major jump. Not just in terms of how you do your work, but also just how you manage your life and your time, because it's very different working for yourself versus working for somebody else. So that was another big challenge of just like mentally getting into the mindset of it's on me now. Like it's all on me to make this work instead of essentially my employer signing me work. Well, now I have to go out and get it and figure out everything else. So that was a
Mm-hmm.
huge challenge.
Yeah, 100%. It's not only the challenges of medical writing itself, but to managing your own business and
Yes.
communicating with the clients and everything, all the dynamics that go into it.
Yes.
And when it comes to the challenge of finding people with a similar background, finding your community, do you
Mhm.
have any advice, any tips for someone who's going through the same challenge?
I would say use LinkedIn. It is an awesome resource. Um, yes, for me, I think I just typed in veterinarian medical writer and saw who came up and, clicked on the little, button to send a connection request. I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
term for it.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say use LinkedIn because it's so easy to be able to connect with people via LinkedIn. I think another option is to join an organization. So for me, the American Medical Writers Association has been an incredible opportunity for me, not only to connect with other vets who are medical writers, but also just the larger medical writing community. It's just a very warm and welcoming organization. And we recently had our annual conference, and I remember feeling like this is my tribe. So I think that's a very important feeling as you are maybe transitioning into medical writing, just getting started, is to really find who are those people um, that I can most connect with, that I can feel most comfortable around, who are, thinking like I do and want the same kind of career pursuits that I also want. So it's a bit of a circuitous answer, but I think LinkedIn absolutely, and joining a writing organization, whether it's AMWA or there are others. There's a science writers organization. There's an association, I think, for editors. Um, it takes a little bit of research, but I think just taking advantage of the online tools of LinkedIn and joining a writing organization that most fits the type of writing that you want to do.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree that finding the tribe, either if it's online or making an effort to find people close to you
Yes.
that you share a similar career path, that makes the total difference. And we talked a little bit about the challenges of having your own business and managing everything that goes into it. Would you share a little bit about the strategies you have to successfully build and maintain a client base on that?
I would say that it takes time. It takes time to build that client base. It's not realistic to think that as soon as you start or essentially like hang out your shingle that you're a freelancer, that clients are just going to come rushing to you and you'll have this wonderful client base from the start. That's not the case. And I'm not saying that to sound cynical. It's just, it's important to realize that when you get started, it's about doing the groundwork and building the foundation. so that by doing those things, then you get to that steady client base where you don't have to necessarily grind so hard to get clients. So for me, the strategy again was LinkedIn.
Hmm.
So I spent time recrafting my LinkedIn profile, to say that I was a freelancer, of course, say that I'm a veterinarian, and that was how I got my first client. So, and a lot of my clients, through the 7 years that I've been in business, have been websites. So, when I write my articles and they get posted, well, I post those on LinkedIn. So, not every single time I post because that can look very self-promotional, be kind of a
Hmm.
turnoff to potential clients. But putting my name out there enough so that clients who are interested or looking for a writer who does what I do, um, my name will show up. So that was essentially my strategy for building my client base was using LinkedIn. I also have a business website, but I see that as more secondary because I know that a lot of potential clients, they'll go on LinkedIn first. And then like they might go to your website second just to know more about, just to get to know more about you, see more of your writing portfolio to see if you're actually a good match. So, I feel fortunate that I was able to use LinkedIn in that way. I know that there are other strategies like doing cold emails, essentially, making a spreadsheet of potential clients and sending out emails that way. I tried it a few times, it never really worked for me. So, LinkedIn really has been my strategy for gaining clients and building a strong client base. And along with that, even though it sounds simple, it's be a good person and be good at what you do. I have found that those two things have really paid off for me, because clients, even if you're an excellent writer, they're not going to want to work with you if you're not professional, if you're just like not a good person to work with. Um, so I found that consistently doing good work and being professional and just being nice. Those 2 things have actually really gone a long way.
Yeah, that's so true. And sometimes this makes the big difference too. If the client's gonna come back later,
Mhm.
and then you don't have to keep reaching out to. I mean, you don't have to get at a certain point new clients, but on your own. Like these people would refer you
Yes,
to other organizations that can also hire you. So
yes, yes.
that's very important for retaining the
That's
clients.
that's definitely the goal is to be able to get more work from current clients, and get potential clients reaching out to you rather than you always having to go out, like you said, and find clients over and over and over again.
Yeah, and that makes it easy. I imagine, like in the case of having multiple clients, context switching can be a challenge too. So if you are working with the same clients over and over, it makes it easy for you to keep up to date with
Yes,
their subject matter. So,
yes. Mhm.
and in terms of that, about the subject matter, how is that for you? Like learning whenever you get a new client,
Mhm.
what are your strategies to get up to speed on the topics that you're going to write about?
So for my client base, there's really not a lot that I have to do with each client to understand or learn more about what they expect me to write because it's pretty much all the same for across my clients is pet owner education. So even though they might, the topics may vary from one client to another, they're still kind of within the same theme. So there's really not much I have to get up to speed on in terms of learning the material. It's more about learning the style, like if they have a particular writing style or a writing guide, and making sure that I follow those. So, of course, that's just my experience. I'm sure it's different for other freelancers, but for me, because the type of writing I do is the same for each client, that's not what I have to get up to speed on. It's more, does this client have a writing style or a writing guide that's different than that of another client?
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's a big part of it too, understanding what's expected in terms of the style and,
Right.
just the structure of the content.
Mhm.
Um, and in terms of delivering the work and then getting feedback from clients, how would you say that communicating, like understanding the impact of the work is on a freelancing setting versus on or a more traditional uh, role?
Yeah, I would say that probably depends on the client, the employer, and the type of writing that you're doing. So for me, with consumer education, um, I usually don't get a lot of feedback from my clients. Part of that could be just the way that I approach how I write, that the first draft that I submit to them is probably my second or third. So I try to make it as flawless as possible so that um, they don't necessarily have to do a lot of heavy editing. But again, I think it depends on the type of writing. So I think for my type of writing, it's a bit more casual, more informal. But let's say you're maybe a freelancer or you're employed and it's like a regulatory type of document, or it's at a Medcom agency, um, and you're preparing a manuscript for publication. So I don't think there's really one solid answer, that it probably
Mhm.
just depends a lot on the type of client, um, what your first draft looks like when you submit it, and the specific type of medical writing that you're doing.
Yeah, that's so true. You mentioned that your first draft that you delivered to them is actually your second or your third. So
Yes.
that's an important point right there.
Mhm.
Making sure that you deliver the best work, so you don't have
Yes.
to keep on the back and forth, which can be
Exactly.
a big portion of a freelancer's time.
Yes. Yes. My goal is to make it as easy for the client as possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And is there any project or any particular piece of content you've worked on that stands out as being especially rewarding or that you're really proud of?
I would say there are a few. Um, for one or two of my clients, I wrote about euthanasia and end of life. Um, for pets. And those come to mind because euthanasia is a very difficult topic. It's not something that we want to think about, that our pets are not going to live forever. So writing about euthanasia, end of life care for pets, that's a very sensitive topic. Um, so it's not something I take lightly. So I think being able to write with sensitivity and empathy on something that every pet owner is going to have to face at some point, that stands out for me, because that really goes to the crux of why I want to write for pet owners, is to express empathy and to have them understand that I know what you're going through, and I can write in such a way that you will connect with the topic no matter how difficult it is. So that's one that stands out. Another um, is actually a project I'm working on now, with one of my clients, and I've written for them for several years, and I write guides on pet care products, like the articles like the top 10, dog foods for 2022. Um, and those projects stand out, one, because they're difficult. Um, they're mentally draining, but I think they're very important. And I respect the rigor that the client puts into these guides and how much research goes into them to ensure that the content that they publish on their website is well researched and it's accurate, it's factual. There are no gaps. So even though these projects are a lot of work when they're published, I really feel good about them because of how much went into them and how much research and work went into them, and knowing that a pet owner is going to read it and actually, you know, take the content seriously and use that information to guide, their decisions on how to care for their pet.
I love that. Yeah, that's and there's a lot of you mentioned empathy, so
Mhm.
that's a big part of a medical writer's role too.
Yes.
So and in your niche, where you're speaking directly to pet owners, um, pets are a big part of their lives. So empathy is definitely important there.
Yes.
And I would like to touch a little bit upon work-life balance because I know that as a freelancer, it can be at the same time that you have your flexibility to work on your own hours and manage your time. There is the stressful part of being able to do that as well. So,
Yes.
can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would say that's kind of like the blessing and the curse of freelancing. Like
Mhm.
the blessing is flexibility, but the curse is, it's also flexibility. And I think that's where self discipline comes in. It definitely takes self discipline to be able to manage your time, to be able to manage all of your deadlines when you're a freelancer. And on a personal note, I have a toddler. So my time is even more precious now. So I have to be even more self disciplined about managing my time. So I want to make sure that I fully answer your question. But work life balance, it's a challenge every day because there will always be multiple constraints on your time. So being self-disciplined, I make a to-do list every day. I make one for the day, for the week, for the month. So planning ahead of time as much as I can um, is absolutely essential to me being able to manage my time and being able to get my work done, high quality work on time that meets my clients' expectations, but also taking care of the home front as well, whether doing chores or, taking care of my kid. So, the freedom and flexibility of freelancing is amazing. But with that comes an incredible amount of self discipline to really learn how to manage your time in a way that you get all of your work done, but you're not necessarily grinding yourself to the bone, trying to get all of your work done
Mhm.
and manage, life outside of work.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good advice. And as we wrap up the conversation, do you have any final considerations or advice to someone that is looking into a career in freelance medical writing?
Do your research. I think that's one of the biggest things. Freelancing, it is incredible, and it's just an incredible opportunity to be able to craft your career the way that you want it, but it takes planning. It takes research. It takes discipline. It takes introspection. So it takes, financial management. So I would say really take the time to learn about business ownership. Um, if you want to do freelance medical writing, there are different courses that you can take on freelance medical writing. I think Emma Hitt has a 6-week course on freelance medical writing. Health Writer Hub website has some courses. It's more geared towards health writing, but I think there may be some courses on freelance health writing. Um, so it's really about laying the groundwork and doing your research and really understanding more about yourself, understanding why you want to freelance, what you want to do with your freelancing career. Are you financially stable enough to handle the ups and downs of freelancing? Do you understand the nuts and bolts of business ownership and how to structure your business, such as LLC or a score, sole proprietor? Working with a business coach, I think, is one of the best things you can do if you like to do freelance medical writing. because it saves you time from having to figure everything out yourself. When you can work with someone who's been there, done that, and can streamline the process for you getting ready for freelancing. Um, talking about preparing for freelancing could be another 30 minutes. So I'm trying to boil it down, but it really comes down to doing your research and laying the groundwork first.
Yeah, I love that, doing your research, making sure you rely on people who have done what you were trying to accomplish.
Yes.
That's a big one.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much, JoAnna, for joining us today, for sharing your story. Thank you for everyone who's watching. I loved learning about your career, and I hope the audience loved as much as I did. So that's a wrap for today, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Medical Writing Stories.